Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. And welcome to December. Pinch punch, what all that nonsense. This is Views on the News.
Was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the Caribbean drag.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that, guys?
Well, as you know, I never know who's going to turn up in the panel for these shows. And I didn't know I was going to make it myself because there's work going on in the road. New cabinets are being put up. Fiber optics is coming. And in the meantime, my connectivity has gone right down. Anyway, we have got on today's panel, Guy from Manchester. How the devil are you?
Oh, good, thanks. Cheers.
Good. And David from New York. How the devil
Hello.
are you?
Okay, very good. Thank you for asking.
Well, I'm glad to see you because we both know that you have recently survived a serious operation. So well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, the surgery to replace my mitral valve was on the 15th of November, and so we're at December 1st. So, every day gets a little better.
That's right. Yes, you're 2 weeks into your second life.
And if anything, it has only informed my non-belief.
Okay.
and made me, in a very secular way, realize, although I realize this already, how random things are, how every day truly is a gift, and how it is all over way too fast.
Absolutely, yeah. We wake up in the morning and discover we've got another day.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
So down to the serious business of the news. And of course, religious news tends to be a bit grim, a lot of it. So we start with the Taliban, who have, I'm not going to show you the video of this. News, incidentally, is becoming increasingly video-based with the spread of camera phones and connectivity, mobile connectivity. We're moving away from the written word into visuals. So pretty much all my news is now illustrated by clips. I'm not going to show you the clip of this one because who wants to see the Taliban conducting their 6th public execution? It's not me. I don't want to see that. But that's what they've done.
Entirely predictable that they would do that because that's what they were doing before, and it was notorious then.
Right.
Nothing's changed in that sense. They're coming from a barbaric age. It's and it's in accordance with their particularly strict and I would say retrogressive interpretation of Islam. There are plenty of Muslims out here who disagree with that and think that Islam should not be doing that and should be tolerating and working with people of other faiths and no faith. But the Taliban are not among them.
No, well, I would say that the Taliban are the true believers because they're fundamentalists. They take the text to mean what it says, and that the moderates are not really in that group at all. They're on the way to becoming atheists like us.
Well, yes, I mean, I can see that, and I understand that. But actually, I've just listened to a very interesting book on Audible called "The Reopening of the Muslim Mind." And it's really by an interesting and very knowledgeable Muslim moderate who says, well, it's not straightforward. What's happening is that these very strict Salafist and sort of Islamist types are cherry picking the Quran and interpreting it towards that very, barbaric sort of aim. Whereas there are plenty of other Muslims who say no, that's the wrong way to look at the Quran. You've got to
Yes.
balance it with these other bits and come up with a much more sort of moderate and
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
would say that if a text enables you to cherry pick the bits you like, it's not a very reliable source of information.
Well, I agree. I mean, the Bible's just the same, isn't it? I mean,
Right. I mean, that's just it. And that to me is the underlying feature of all, not only just the Abrahamic traditions, but all really, that there, and I saw this in all the things that we're going to talk about today, this almost fascist tendency to scuttle people and make them fall under your thumb, under your personal religious beliefs. We've seen this time and time again. We see this in the United States. We see this, with the religious right, and it is a form of fascism, as far as I can see.
Absolutely.
You take away people's right to think. You take away people's right to access books, to gather, to be free with their bodies, all for the sake of your God, and your God is fill in the blank. And it's why I could never ever, even in the most gentlest ways, be religious, because it's a slippery slope.
Yes, I think that's very right. I mean, there's a huge difference, isn't there, in moral thinking. For us, you can only be truly moral if you're free to make a decision that is right.
Right.
And you've got to make your own decision based on, what you think are the right sort of principles to follow. But if you're in a religion, particularly this sort, you have to do whatever it is that the clerical authorities say is right. And if you fail to do that in Islam, you are in big trouble, and you could even get the chop. It is quite extraordinary, and from our point of view, that's not moral at all.
Right?
That's
that's barbaric.
It's
exactly.
Absolutely, it's control freakery, and that's what it's about. Yeah. So I'm a fan of this next guy, the next item, Musab Youssef. He's the son of the Hamas co-founder, and he keeps cropping up in Global Atheist News. I've featured him 2 or 3 times recently, because he is now speaking like a humanist, on behalf of anti-Hamas doctrine, and he's done it again recently at Princeton University in New Jersey. And this is another video, and I'm not going to show you because it goes on, but I would recommend you watching it, because he's quite a charismatic speaker, and he does say a lot of very sensible things. So I'll put a link to this in the details underneath this video. Meanwhile, there's been a peace agreement between Hezbollah and Israel.
I thought it was just a ceasefire, wasn't it? Is it a real peace agreement?
Maybe it's.
Maybe it is. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
A rose by any other name.
What's the difference? A ceasefire is temporary. A peace agreement is permanent. But what's permanent? Anyway,
especially in that area of the world.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, what's happened is, since the agreement has been reached, certain members of Hezbollah have declared that it's a victory. Watch this. they're celebrating, firing guns to enjoy, because they think they have won. But in fact, what has happened is their entire senior command and all the senior command's replacements were killed. 80% of Hezbollah's missile capability was destroyed. 4,000 Hezbollah fighters were killed and 16,000 were injured. And 50% of Hezbollah's infrastructure was destroyed. That's the victory that they are celebrating.
Yeah. Well, I mean, surely the point here is that there's 2 points. Firstly, let them feel that way, because it's a way of saving face. But the other point is, maybe they're measuring what victory means in a way that's different from what the Israelis think in terms of. For them, just surviving maybe is a victory.
Mm.
Yeah.
Except that if they're anything like Hamas, they don't care whether the non-military population that they're supposed to be representing get killed. They treat those armament that are dispensable.
Yeah, well, that's right. And so they have different measuring sticks. That's the point I'm making. Yeah.
If you're going to persist in this delusion, then no matter what the outcome, you have to figure out a way. It's just like everything else connected to religion. You have to come out on top.
Yeah.
Even though you're celebrating this false victory in the middle of a city that's in shambles, you still have to prove to yourself and to others that you won, even if you didn't win.
Yeah. We call it spin doctoring in this country. I don't know whether you have that expression in the US.
Yeah. I mean, no, there. Trust me, there's a lot of spin. I mean, you can get really dizzy here in the US with all the spin that goes on.
So the next item, and there's a lot of items in the news tonight, and we probably won't get time to cover them all. But in Toronto, police arrested a Jewish journalist who was reporting on a pro-Hamas protest. Now, his offense was that he was standing on the pavement, the sidewalk, I expect you would call it, reporting on the Hamas, on the pro-Palestinian protesters. But the police determined that his existence in that situation was threatening, and they have arrested him.
And
almost something identical happened in London a few months ago, didn't it? There was a Jewish guy just present at a pro-Palestinian, I think it was, demonstration. And the police thought that his very presence was, I think he wanted to cross the road or something. Was a provocative. You can understand it from the police's point of view, but from the point of view of freedom, it seems a bit crazy, really.
Well, the police are on a hiding to nothing here, aren't they?
And they arrested him, or they just moved him on to some place else?
Him, took him off to the police in handcuffs. Yep.
You can't imagine that they could possibly charge him with anything, for God's sake.
Right. We don't know what happened when he got back to the police station. But the thing is that the police are on a hiding to nothing because the protesters vastly outnumber them. They can't arrest that lot, even if they are calling for the death of Jews, which they commonly do.
Yeah.
This
is what concerns me. You get demonstrations who are actually inciting violence.
Yes.
It's just and the police do nothing because there's so many of them.
Yes. And they go for the soft option, which is arresting the innocent people who are objecting to the protesters.
Yeah.
That is not good.
Yeah. I mean, that's it's an upside down world sometimes,
Very much.
It certainly is.
Yeah. So in Bethlehem, or near Bethlehem, the church was being decorated for Christmas because,
That's
of
where
course,
Guy was born. Wasn't Guy born in Bethlehem?
exactly. Yeah.
Are you suddenly a believer now, David?
It was God's son, actually. Get it right. Anyway, they were decorating their church, and Palestinians, non-Christian Palestinians, Muslims attacked the church because it was being decorated for Christmas. That was it was being improved, as it were, symbolically for this Christian celebration, because they'd had no reason to attack it previously, but following the decorations, this is what they did.
أنا هنا عند الكنيسة شوفهم ولا هاي بلا شور محجار هاي بلا شور محجار هايهم.
That's Bethlehem, or next door to Bethlehem, Beit Sahur.
It's all this testosterone, because in every clip you showed me, it's always men, it's always teen boys, and they're always reactionary. It's mob mentality, and you mix that in with the most indecent aspects of organized faith, and you're going to get violence towards people, towards property, towards anything, because it just takes one spark.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I bet there will be Muslims who think, no, that was the wrong thing to do.
I'm sure.
But the trouble is that the minority, if it is a minority, who are intolerant of other beliefs, they seem to be in the ascendant, not just there, but all over the Muslim world at the moment.
Yeah. Which, unfortunately, thanks to migration, thanks to basically cheap flights, the Muslim world is everywhere. There is no separation between the West and the Muslims anymore. We've let them in. So I could show you some more heinous activity, but I'll spare you that. But there's innocent Hindu whose shop was sacked, and he was kicked by Muslims in Bangladesh because it's sparking off there too. And this is not against Christians, this is against Hindus,
That's been going on for decades. The number, after partition, there was quite a large percentage of a Hindu minority. It might have been 15-20%, but it's now less than 10%, I think, in Bangladesh.
Yeah. Indeed. Yeah. So
something similar went on in Pakistan as well.
Yes. But the separation was not perfect, was it? When the British Raj was broken up. So take a look at this. We've just been saying how these issues have spread everywhere. So where do you think this is?
It looks like the Treasury buildings or something like that.
Whitehall. That is by the gates of Downing Street, where the pro-Palestinian rioters were trying to obtain access, and the police were doing their best to prevent them.
Yeah, I mean, it is very concerning that we have this going on, but I don't know how we balance freedom of expression
Right.
on the one side and keeping order on the other side.
Indeed.
Yeah. I agree with the guy because I believe, as you said at the start of the show, you need to have the freedom to think and to gather and to organize in order to be truly free.
Yeah,
But if you're going to do violence with that, then I think you've really crossed the line.
yeah.
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 Violence is not a good persuasive technique, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So going to your country, David,
Welcome.
not your side, the other
Okay.
side, UCLA, in fact. At UCLA, this Jordanian woman spoke very eloquently.
I'm from Jordan, and I grew up there. Aiden, as a young man, I commend you for putting on a suit and coming out here tonight. I appreciate that from a professor, okay? But you also have to have enough humility to know that you don't know enough. And I'm telling you that as an Arab. So where would I rather live? Tel Aviv or Gaza? Who would I rather live amongst? Hamas, which is what you're advocating for. So like I said, I appreciate, you putting on a suit and coming here and speaking for my people. My people don't want you speaking for them because you're not helping us.
Let her speak.
Before the British mandate, I could have been a Palestinian instead of a Jordanian or Egyptian. It's the same people. So don't act like you know my people better than myself or Yusuf. This is the arrogance and the problem that I have with the encampments. I came here tonight with a fucking taser because you think you're protesting peacefully? I'm going to be okay showing up here by myself because white, entitled, spoiled Americans want to get attention? You're making it worse for Arabs here and back home.
Wow. Yeah, calling truth to power.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's not only the messenger, but it's the message, but it's the messenger.
Yeah.
And here's somebody who's clearly rational, probably someone who wants peace more than anything else.
Yeah.
And people who think that they're well intentioned are doing quite the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But
I mean, there was not enough context for me to really fully understand what was going on there.
Well, no. She was speaking against the representation of pro-Palestine as pro-Hamas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, of course, there is it's very complicated to separate the Palestinian ordinary people and their leadership. Mm-hmm. And John was complaining this morning that in my local town here in Rochdale, was it today or in the last day or two, a Palestinian flag has been hoisted in front of the town hall by the mayor, who I think is an Asian. Obviously very sympathetic. And the reality is in Rochdale, we have a lot of Bangladeshis and Pakistanis who are very concerned about Gaza. Mm-hmm. Only earlier this year, they elected an MP in a by-election who was very strongly in favor of the rights of Gaza as against Israel. Mm-hmm. He lost his seat after a few months in the general election. But I mean, the reality is we do have a strong, community that feel that the Palestinians are suffering. Of course, they are.
Because they are.
Exactly. We understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not the whole story, and it's uncomfortable to see, only one side being sort of promoted like that.
Absolutely, and on that very subject of, Islamic or Muslim, let's say, rather than Islamic, Muslim MPs, take a look at this one in the House of Commons last week, who wants to reintroduce the law of blasphemy that we've only recently, to our shame, eradicated. Take a look.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. November marks Islamophobia Awareness Month. Last year, the United Nations Human Rights Council adopted a resolution condemning the desecration of religious texts, including the Quran, despite opposition from the previous government. Acts of such mindless desecration only serve to fuel division and hatred within our society. Will the Prime Minister commit to introducing measures to prohibit the desecration of all religious texts and the prophets of the Abrahamic religions?
Can I agree with him that desecration is awful and I think should be condemned across the House? We are, as I said before, Mr. Speaker, committed to tackling all forms of hatred and division, including, of course, Islamophobia in all of its forms. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah.
No,
Well, I mean-
not here.
Yeah.
No, I just love your parliament. I just love to hear everybody like grousing and like,
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that this is the sort of establishment speak, and has been during the time of the Conservatives as well, and it's gone on a long time. What we need to hear is somebody to say, well, we've got to insist that people have the right to freedom of speech, and desecrating or offending somebody in a religion is not against the law, and we're not going back to blasphemy. What we want to hear is Starmer say something like that, but he's not saying it.
Yes, but no, of course, the reason he's not saying it is because he wants that idiot's vote when it comes to.
Yeah, and I want to hear Starmer saying, we're not going to use the term Islamophobia because it quite clearly confuses legitimate criticism of a particular belief system with bigotry, and they're not the same thing.
Yes. Indeed, what they're trying to do is merge a religion with a race, and that is nonsense, especially in the case of Muslim religion, because they're from all over the world. There's Indonesian Muslims, Arab Muslims.
Well, I don't think it is. Well, maybe it is, but I mean, they talk about hate speech, and hate speech is a very problematic concept. I mean, we've had the extraordinary phenomenon of people actually being visited by the police for what they call a non-crime hate thought or something. I mean, that's bloody ridiculous. We've got to call that out and say we're not having that. We've got to have some respect for freedom of expression in this country.
Yes. You weren't with us last week, Guy, but we had a young lady on the video where she had been followed up, almost sought out by the police, because she had expressed on camera somewhere, I think it was GB News, that the Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs were still in operation. And instead of the police going and finding these grooming gangs and arresting them, they went to her, chasing her through several previous addresses until they located her, and then effectively nearly arrested her, telling her to keep her mouth shut.
Well, I mean, that's
you can still see that.
Incredible, isn't it?
You can still see that on last week's show, which is now a podcast. But yes, it's bloody stupid.
I mean, I find that a
better way of.
But I mean, we do need to find a way of combating plain hate speech and bigotry in the full sense of the word. But we've
Yes.
got to also insist that it is a legitimate and carefully sort of thought through critique of a particular religious idea is not hate speech.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to burning the Quran, I personally am opposed to burning books generally.
Right.
And I can see that that's offensive, but I do not think that it should be a crime.
Right.
No. If you own the book, you're entitled to burn it, basically.
Well, yeah, well, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, book burnings are not my favorite. I can think of a lot of other pastimes that I think I personally enjoy.
Yeah, they're very difficult to set fire, I'm afraid, books.
Yeah.
They're not like wood, which is full of oxygen. They don't burn very easily. But on the subject of hate speech, take a look at this.
And nowadays, of course, we are close to Christmas. And so we see around us that the people are preparing themselves to celebrate Christmas. And with great sadness, we see that amongst us there are those who think it's a small matter. And so, not only might we congratulate them on their Christmas, on their false holiday and celebration, but we may take part in their holiday as well. Do you know that you and I must be offended when people say that they worship Jesus, or when they say that Jesus is the Son of God? Why do our hearts not react? There are those who will say to them, Merry Christmas. What are you congratulating them on? Congratulations on the birth of your Lord? Is that acceptable to a Muslim? Are you now approving of their beliefs? By you saying that, you are approving of it. If a person were to commit every major sin, الزنا, التعامل بالربا, الكذب, القتل, murder, committing adultery, dealing with interest, all of these sins, if a person were to do all of those major sins, they are nothing compared to the sin of congratulating and greeting the non-Muslims on their false festivals. This doesn't mean that we treat the non-Muslims in a bad way, that we deal with them unjustly. I'm not saying, and I've never said, go out and just kill them and do this to them. No. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that don't allow the enmity that may exist between you and a people cause you to be unjust towards them. Rather, be just.
So saying Happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, is worse than murder.
Yeah.
Wow.
Bizarre, isn't it? And it'll be preachers like that who will have incited the people in Bethlehem to go and attack the church.
Right.
It's a form of intolerant Islam.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. I think it's far too true to the sort of original literal interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, but fortunately, there are Muslims who don't go along with that.
Yeah, I mean, what I find interesting is the words he chooses, because words have power. He doesn't call people fellow humans. He says the enemy, as if it's a form of combat, that it's a war in essence. And that to me is dangerous thinking. Certainly, as an atheist, as a humanist. Even people who are deeply religious, I don't consider an enemy, but when you're so far down the religious fascist rabbit hole, anybody who doesn't, even in your own faith, right? Because there's this intersectarian violence all the time. So it's not only just the Muslims against the Jews, or the Muslims against the Christians, or Hindus against whoever. It's the fact that even within those faith traditions, there's violence towards people of the same faith.
Yes, exactly. Roman Catholic, Protestant, the Shia versus the Sunni.
Right. Absolutely. You had, look at Ireland. I mean, for goodness sakes, right? I mean, so it It's easy to do violence. It's much easier to do violence when you think, quote unquote, God is on your side.
Yeah. And disclosure, there is no evidence for any God.
No,
Keep it
of
up,
course
mates.
not. Of course not. That's why I did air
Well,
quotes.
I always disagree with that. I think there is evidence, but it's just bad evidence. It's not credible evidence.
Okay, that's the same thing.
I mean, the Gospels are evidence, but they are, they wouldn't stand up in a court of law.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's a court of law matter. I think it's a scientific matter to prove the existence of something.
Well,
and I don't think
fair enough.
proof anyway. But anyway, that's another show. In fact,
the
you and I have had.
The definition of evidence is a fact or an object that tends to confirm some other proposition.
That's the legal definition. Yeah, that's not the scientific definition.
Oh, what's the
But
scientific definition, John?
Well, you and I have had this conversation. We made a couple of shows about this a couple of years ago. And in scientific terms, evidence consists of repeatable, independently
observable,
recorded observations.
In that sense,
material. Right.
There's no evidence. There could be no evidence in that sense. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
No scientific evidence. Yeah.
And it is a scientific question. You can't argue a God into existence, and the court of law is a venue for argument. So it's going to fail when it comes to questions of existence. You couldn't, if you had a case to try and decide whether the Loch Ness monster actually existed, you wouldn't go to a court of law to make that decision. You'd go to Loch Ness and get your binoculars out.
Yeah.
Anyway, we want to end on a lighter note. So I want to show you some, I think these are Afghanistan Muslims, and they're attacking musical instruments. Look at this.
Yet another form of book burning.
Because music is so sensuous that it can lead people astray and divert them straight and narrow. I think it's about something
exactly. Music is haram.
I know, but it's unbelievable, really, from our point of view.
It is, yeah. And you notice that they videoed that on mobile phones.
Yes,
okay?
Yes,
right.
which were the product of science.
Right.
So what's this?
हिंदू अपने बच्चों को मोबाइल ही नहीं दे रहे, इसलिए वो तरक्की कर रहा है, ऑफिसर बन रहा है। ये तालिबे ही है वो तालिबे ही सारे फेल हो रहे।
Yes, well, this
so
is
mobile
why,
phones are also.
Yeah, I mean, it's bizarre, isn't it? And did you notice in the first video how much fun they were having?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, but so mobile phones are also haram, except for the one that's making that video.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing about this book that I've been listening to, The Reopening of the Muslim Mind, is how the author is really worried and concerned about the fact that Muslim countries have generally not been developing and are backward, and the only ones that are doing well are the ones that have got oil or something like that. And you know, it is about their opposition to science, innovation, and evidence and things like this, which of course goes straight back to these religious attitudes.
Learning. Then they don't allow women to be educated, so of course they're going to fail. Anyway, guys, that's it. I've run out of the will to live.
Well, pump yourself back up, please, my friend.
Yeah, we need you next week.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that word of encouragement, and thank you very much for taking part in this show. And now it's time to say bye-bye. And thank you for the audience. They won't have seen it yet, but it's going to be available very shortly. Bye-bye.
Was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the carry-on drag.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that guy?